How y'all doing? Getting started momentarily. So let's see what we're looking like. So this is Darryl Jr. The topic today is altered states and what happens when you go out of body, what it's like when you're going out of body. So this is opened up. At least I'm preparing to open up a new astral travel or out of body experience class. Figured I'd talk about the topic and give people an idea of what it's like on the way to going out of body, and maybe talk about some of the different experiences I had that uh, illustrate these different scenarios. Um, if you're interested in the class or the course, you could just go to darrylberryjr.com and go to the courses and classes at the top. You could fill out the application right there. But right now, we'll go straight to uh, Travel 4 in Chapter 7. Is about the basic theory and practice. And basically, I break down the the theoretical framework that I utilize to understand the out of body experience and to initiate the out of body experience. Um, so as I continue to learn, I find that there's different ways of explaining it, as well as a higher perspective in which you don't even get out of body at all, really, in which the whole universe is an illusion. That's really a different topic, but I think it's worth mentioning because I find that when people talk about metaphysics, often they talk about just their own perspective or just their own experience from a certain perspective, not realizing that there's ever and ever broader vistas of perspective from which to view the experience. Um, Another thing I learned is that just like anything, just like how you know most of you know that I often talk to or moderate debates with flat earth believers, and you could observe the flat earth believers how they believe the earth is flat when evidence is totally against it, but that's their belief and they hold on to it. So um, just like with that, with non-physical experience, the same thing happens. Uh, it's very important to recognize that the non-physical experience, any type of non-physical experience, is not some kind of cornucopia or uh, you know, of understanding. You could be mistaken just as well with the non-physical experiences, and perhaps even more so because in a non-physical state you could change things to look a certain way, but in the physical state, you know, a sunset and a sunrise is what it is, but people still could delude themselves into thinking it's something else. So be mindful of that. So I'll talk about that greater perspective once in a while as well, but for now, just to be clear, I'm talking about primarily the direct first-hand experiential perspective, what it seems like will be experienced, what's observable as far as we can observe from the with the technology that we do have. So basically what I do is, if you go to chapter 7 of Travel 4, you can see I talk about the progression marker list of the altered states that we experience. So what I found in my research, um, there's this lady named Powell, last name Powell, who made these like um, sort of based off the work of Robert Monroe. Robert Monroe is, as far as I know, the first person to recognize that you can take brain waves, you can take sound waves, and you can put two sound waves together of different frequencies, and they make a different frequency inside the brain that can help you get into altered states. And I experimented with that a little bit. In the end, I, um, I think it's better, at least for me, to just stick with the natural way of applying your mind and your focus and your intent. But suffice it to say, along that line of research, I came to the conclusion that the altered states we experience are aligned with certain brainwave states. I plan on looking into it more deeply. Uh, to the extent that I looked into it so far, I'm aware that the awakened state that we're in right now is the beta state, like the beta brainwave state. And any state outside of the beta brainwave state that we work with is called an altered state, which simply means it's a state that's different from our regular waking state. So when you talk about the out of body experience, when you talk about meditation, when you talk about psychic powers, all of these things occur in altered states. Either you're 100% in an altered state, or you mix the beta waking state with an altered state. So for instance, when you're doing telepathy, you might be in a like when you talk about remote viewing. Remote viewing is when my understanding is it was actually started by the military, and they got this guy named Ingo Swann to try to find some psychic way to spy on people, and they came up with the term. They didn't want to use the term clairvoyance. Apparently, it was just too metaphysical, but that's basically what it is, clairvoyance. But they called it remote viewing. And in my experience and research, um, that's a theta state. Basically, they start out the primarily in a theta state where you can basically take the little imagery and things that you might experience on your way to sleep and use your mind to focus that imaging ability and focus it on things that is really going on. So that's another example as well. One time I did my Wrote Institute, and I asked them about this, and I got a confirmation of a particular alter state. I believe he confirmed Delta as the alter state for the OBE, but unfortunately I lost that email. I tried to find it a few times. I think it must have been on one of my old email accounts years ago. But suffice it to say that in my experience, and at least in my theoretical understanding that I utilize to cause the experience and teach others to cause the experience, the out-of-body experience happens in the delta state. The theta state is an in-between state. In deep theta, you can initiate the experience. And the alpha state is basically the light, very light meditation state that's on the way. So what I'll do here is I'll talk about more specifically and expound upon my explanations and travel far about what these states mean and what you experience in these states. So I'll talk about the alpha state. Uh, Basically, the alpha state is the first state you experience when you're going into an altered state. So, like right now, I'm in a beta state. I'm fully awake. I'm talking physically with my mouth and so on and so forth. But even if you just close your eyes, your brain will start to make more alpha waves. Um, when you start to get into the alpha state, you start to experience shapes, forms, scenery. Uh, well, excuse me, skip lines. You experience shapes, forms, not scenery, but shapes like amorphous shapes. Like for instance, yellowish globs of light, amorphous shapes like this. If you ever saw a lava lamp, it's like one of those lava lamps, but there's usually a monotone color. For me, it's usually yellowish, like a yellowish blobs going around or yellowish specks of light behind your eyes. But usually you experience this almost immediately after you start to go into an altered state. Um, Very light altered state. You could also experience faint vibrations in the body. You could feel like your skin is tingling, almost like static electricity is starting to build up over your skin. Um, you could also experience increased mind chatter where it seems like your mind is starting to go really fast and you start to think about a bunch of things. And conversely, your mind could get really quiet. So it's pretty easy to get into an alpha state. It was going on, Maxwell. It's pretty easy to get into an alpha state. You could pretty much just close your eyes and sit still for a while, and after a while you can get into an alpha state. But generally you won't be able to experience much non-physical occurrences in the alpha state. It's pretty, you know, there's been times when I get into an alpha state just to think about a problem. Like let's say I wanna solve a math problem, for instance. I might go into an alpha state and think about it in the alpha state. As long as you don't hit the increased start alpha state, you hit the sort of quieter start alpha state. It's pretty easy to think about stuff in that state. So a theta state gets more into a more deeper imagery. So I noticed I was in the wrong one now when I saw the colored one. But a theta state is more color type imagery. Before I go to theta though, let me show you this image so you can get an idea of what I might experience in a deeper alpha state. I expound upon this more in the second edition of Travel Form I'm working on. So, but I'll give y'all some of the more expounding now. I actually added this picture into the book online, but I realized that the link is not working, so I'll come back and fix that later. But let me show you right now what some of the alpha shapes look like when you get into the deeper states of alpha. So one thing I find is each state has its light state, its mid state, and its deep state. So I try to, when I'm teaching people, I try to um, very closely characterize the different levels you're in so I could better understand what the student is going through and I could better instruct them. Keep in mind that some of these states, you can go back and forth between the states and they overlap. So I don't really think it's so clear of a cut when you get into the boundaries between the different states. But there are certain things that is um, very amenable to certain states of mind. I thought I had an image addition already in this thing, so let me just make another browser. Let me see here. Well, I shall just use the same screen. Go to image 6. Boom. So when we look at this image right here, so generally in alpha you will have the blobs and things like that. But what I found to happen is when I stay in alpha for a long time, especially when my goal is to reach like a theta state, the blobs will start to take a more definite shape. And when I'm practicing very frequently and I'm reaching the very good alpha states, this is the configuration that the alpha light takes. So instead of being like a sort of amorphous blobs floating around or just pinpricks or almost like static. Like if you look at a TV when it's on the static, it has a sort of like static light in it. Instead of that, it'll first take on a sort of circle in the center, and these circular lightish yellowish light will start to just close and close into the circle. So if you imagine, this is not a static image that I will be seeing. It'll be yellowish light closing into a circle from a ring into a circle, and rings after ring after ring will be closing. So this would be an entirely uh, uh, um, mobile, like a GIF, with the ring is constantly closing into the circle, with another ring coming from the outside and closing into the center over and over. So once I see this, then I know I'm in a very solid alpha state. That's pretty much the boundary of the alpha state between a theta state. You might be going back and forth between alpha and theta. You might see some color or something flashes, and then it comes back into this alpha wave. But definitely when I get into this coecentric circle of yellowish light, then I know I'm in a solid alpha state. One theory or hypothesis I have is that this has to do with the chakras. Hey, what's going on, multi-time? And what I'll do, I'll just explain the different states. I think I should be finished by 2:45 going through the alpha, theta, and the delta state. And then I'll open up the hangout for if anybody want to come on with any questions or comments. And yeah, man, it can seem far out when you're not used to it, but that's just my life. I was been doing these kind of meditations and stuff for a long time, and I started to sort of track. Because one thing I learned, Tom, is that every time I stop practicing and I start practicing again, the process is slightly different. I guess it might be like if you're used to going to a certain location in the forest and maybe you don't go there in a long time, and maybe the trees grow a bit farther, maybe into the forest in a slightly different location, and you have a slightly different path. So I find that every time I started again, which different at various times I stopped practicing for months and sometimes years, then I'll get back into it. I was able to plot different things, and of course I've read like dozens and dozens of books on the topic, so I added some of those things in there as well. If I see it in different sites. Cool. I'll be happy to hear your proofs or your evidence for that multi-time. So I'll finish explaining that about 245. Multi-time says that out-of-body experience is impossible. So I'd be happy to hear your proof to that and how you explain my experiences. But this is like a deep alpha state, a deep alpha state. This is generally what I perceive at the deepest level of alpha, these core-centric closing circles into the dot. And then I'm starting to enter into theta, the theta state at this point. So I came from a beta waking state, sitting down, I'm applying my meditation technique or out-of-body technique or whatever I'm doing at that moment. I'm getting these concentric circles. And then, oh, I forgot that I have this open and behind the scenes. I shall click back to the book momentarily, and I'll come back and uh, and work and we'll look at that image. So getting into the theta state. So light theta is very amorphous colored shapes. We talking like instead of yellowish blobs moving around, you're talking, um, maybe a purple or a reddish blob moving around, or maybe you might see a face appearing and just looking at you, or you might see a scene, like a scene of, one of the best scenes. Well, that's a bit farther into theta, but very localized glimpses of things. Maybe you might see a small circle in the center of your image, in the center of your vision that shows something, and then it starts to expand to more in-depth imagery. And this is one of the web pages that one of my favorite OBE web pages that I found online called Balabean's Astral Pages. Alfred Balabean is a metaphysicist and explored out of body and things like that. He collected a lot of information, and I haven't taken the time myself to make very detailed images like this of the theta imagery. But when I talk about seeing like a localized center, hey, what's going on, Mies? Welcome. When I look into a sort of localized um, uh, theta imagery, when you're in theta, this is a very good example of what you might see. So if you look at this one here, I believe y'all can see my mouse in the video. If you look at this one right here, you can see how it's circular and it's almost like a tunnel. And you can see how it's almost like a scene is in the back of this thing. And actually, I can click it and make it a bit bigger. So imagine seeing this, but in this circle, there's a scene. Like maybe you're looking at um, a doorway. It's almost like a doorway into a different dimension. Um, and so on and so forth. So you could see anything in that. Um, this very much looks like sort of the alpha image I see, but you notice it's blue and yellow, blue and I guess like not yellow, but sort of a light blue. Um, this is almost exactly like what I see in my alpha state, but notice this is reddish. So I would consider this one more of a theta image because it's reddish. But one thing I found is and this guy is like, what? I think he's in, what does DE stand for anyway? Is that Danish? Is that what? Y'all know where that's at? But he's a foreign guy. So people across different cultures and different social backgrounds experience the same things in these altered states. Now this right here, there's one at the top on the left. This looks like a chakra image, and I've seen one like this before as well. Matter of fact, this is around a period of time when I was exploring um, the second research study I did, where we were meeting out of body and doing telepathic experiences. And one of the times when I was doing a telepathic experience with Lewis, I saw an image of a chakra. It matches the image of a chakra in this book called Clairvoyance, I believe the name of the title is. And I'll see if I can find that book and find that image to show it to y'all. But imagine this same exact symbol, but the coloring was a bit different. It's like half and half of different colors, and it perfectly matched that book. And one thing to keep in mind as well is when I'm having these images, I'll feel tingling or sensations in my brow chakra right here. So I'm pretty certain that it has to do with uh, um, the non-physical organs being able to perceive in their certain ways. So I don't like the idea of having to place stock in non-physical organs because I like the idea better that the mind just perceives. But my understanding is just like from the physical perspective, if I close my eyes, I can't see physically. It makes sense that from the non-physical perspective, at that certain frequency, you have non-physical organs that do the same. But I noticed that when I start to have these images, I'll feel a very distinct tingling right in my brow chakra. And and Maxwell here says in the chats, he says, well, a bit farther up, uh, multi-time says metaphysical is Greek, philosophical BS. And he says there's only the material and the supernatural. Well, if you look at the word metaphysical and you look at the word supernatural, depending on how you term it, it can mean the same thing. I simply mean the finer frequencies of existence. The finer frequencies of existence. So I would not prefer the term supernatural because it's all natural to me. It's simply different frequencies of the universe. But I can see metaphysical, so it's kind of like outside the range of the physical, outside the frequency of the physical. So that seems more. But again, supernatural could be the same thing. But whenever I think supernatural, people mostly seem to term it sort of like not natural. And Maxwell Smart says, is there a deep humming noise that you hear? Because I don't, because I have experienced a deep hum that I couldn't locate several times. Maybe I was out of body looking for this noise. Very good point, Maxwell. So going back to the alpha state, yes, sometimes I might experience a sort of hum or noise inside my head. Because one thing to keep in mind is that non-physically, you can perceive in every avenue that you can physically. So just like we have physical sight, we can see non-physically. Just like we have physical sound, we can hear non-physically. We can smell, taste non-physically. We can touch non-physically. So so the non-physical or the altered state things you can experience can be visual. It could be audio. It could be all kind of ways. I would say the deeper the altered state is, the more pronounced is the states that you experience. So in the alpha state, maybe you might experience a light hum, hear a light hum, or maybe some kind of static noise. And then as you get to theta, it might solidify into voices or someone or something talking to you, or hearing a symphony or something like that. Multi-time says, "Oh boy, Eastern mysticism. Are you a New Ager? Define New Ager, multi-time. Define what you mean by New Ager." Sometime right before I fall asleep, I experience a deep humming noise. Yes. So, but that could also be if there's some condition with your ears. I forgot what they call it. I don't know what they call it, but sometimes it could be just a physical thing. It could be just like if you're awake physically, you could plug your ears. Like even now, I can hear a slight humming. So sometimes that can be physical. And also it could be non-physical as well. So I caution anybody looking into metaphysics or the non-physical to not rule out any physical causes or any potential physical scenarios that can account for what you experience, because it could be physical stuff too. Just something to do with your ears or something like that, or noise in the environment. When you go into the altered states, I find that your senses can accentuate. You could even use that as a non-physical technique or a meditation technique or not a body experience technique to listen to a distant sound, for instance, or and focus on that sound. And you can find that you can hear things very far away. But yes, it could also be non-physical sounds as well. All right, so it looks like multi-time in the chat here is just, I guess he's just doubting everything. But whenever you define New Age or multi-time, I could answer that question. So going back to some of the images of theta. So so this one is pretty interesting. This guy right here, he's seeing an image of somebody sitting in meditation. I've never seen one exactly like that, but I've seen something similar. And I think this is relative to the fact that you can see how he's showing this little chakra funnel coming out of his crown chakra, how it relates to the chakras. So I've seen the chakras one time in one of my out of body experiences. I was in this non-physical dimension, and I was being chased by this crowd of non-physical beings. And I intuitively knew, or I was just running in that direction. I went to this bridge, and I looked over the side of the bridge, and I saw this portal in the water, and a portal opened up into my bedroom, and I can see through the ceiling into my bedroom, and I can see my physical body lying on the bed, and on my body I can see the chakras. This is before I knew anything about chakras. I must have been about 7 or 8 years old or something. In my reading, I've read that the chakras have certain colors, and usually they go the colors of the rainbow, like red for the bottom chakra, then orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. But when I looked at these chakras firsthand from the outer body state, it was all multicolored, mostly purple and some reddish. It was like a swirl of colors, like a swirl of like somebody took some pastel paint and swirled it together and made like a circle out of that swirl of colors. Um, so yeah, and multi-time says you can have the same experience using ayahuasca. Yes, I've heard people talk about ayahuasca. Joe Rogan, I believe, used ayahuasca or DMT, and yeah, so I've heard people having similar experiences on ayahuasca or DMT and things like that. Now, as far as a image that I drew myself of the theta image, this is one of the I guess pretty much one of the easiest ones for me to draw. Sometimes it's kind of hard to draw these things, but if you look at this image right here, I had this theta image about 2 years ago, something like that, 3 years ago. And so basically, I went past the alpha state and the alpha lines and things like that, and I started getting some theta imagery, and then this theta imagery resolved into this crystalline light sort of image. So if you can see, if you look at this image, there's still that circular, uh, uh, you know, there's still that circular element in there, just like the circular element in the alpha state. It's just that in this imagery, instead of it being like a collection of circles, that it was just a static uh, crystalline light sort of image of this intersecting light just making this pattern. So of course my drawing doesn't do it justice, but it looks so cool that I wanted to draw it and uh and just somehow encapsulate it, and I'll add it into the second edition to Travel Far. But just imagine this sort of configuration of light, but it's very, very shimmering and scintillating and liquid, almost like light in its configuration. So it's pretty cool. So of course, in the theta state, you can also literally see other places and things. And I remember one time I had this theta imagery where I was looking as if I was looking through this guy's eyes. So I don't know if it was an actual guy or if it was just a theta imagery sort of thing. But it was this big muscle-bound looking sailor guy, and yeah, I was just looking through his eyes while he was doing whatever. So I thought it was pretty cool. It was a pretty solid imagery. One time I had this imagery of seeing this just pyramid. It was like a pyramid, and I was looking as if I was high in the sky, looking down at this large relief of an area, and the pyramid was in the center. And there were these sort of paths going around the pyramid and going towards the pyramid like a labyrinth. And you could see trees and sort of torches going up and down far away from the pyramid. I was very high up, and it was just long relief, but it looked sort of cartoonish. So I can't really say it was a real physical environment, but it definitely looked pretty cool. Um, Let me take a look at the chat. Let me see what's going on here. Yeah, Maxwell. Uh, well, I mean, as far as the imagery, like what specifically do you think seems scary, Maxwell? And what do you mean you don't want people chasing you? Oh, you mean when I was talking about the non-physical being chasing me? Well, yeah, it happens. But just keep in mind that you could defeat them. All you have to do is just not have any fear, and you could use whatever. You could use your imagination to defeat them in every way, any way you want. So, going into full theta. So I have here full theta. You may experience various pronounced energetic sensations, tickling, tingling, prickling, and various other sensations. It can feel like prickling energy, static electricity, or as if insects are crawling across the skin. Spider webs are being strewn upon the skin, or as if water is flowing through under the skin. So such sensations are due to both increased flow of energy in altered states and increased ability to perceive energy in altered states. So I remember when I first started experimenting, consciously realizing what I was doing, I read this book. It's an awesome book called The Practice of Magic, but there's this one chapter about astral projection. And that's when I was doing the technique of just laying down and just relaxing to try to get out of the body. And I reached what I would define now as a solid theta state. And then it felt like insects were crawling all over my skin. It freaked me the hell out, and I would just stop the experience immediately because it was so freaky. And every time I had the experience, I'd get to a certain depth of altered state, and it would feel like ants were crawling all over my skin. But now I know that that's a natural phenomenon, but at the time it scared me. But when you get to the theta state, you can experience all kind of sensations. Water can feel like it's running up and down your legs. Insects can be crawling on you. Sometimes it might feel like a spider web is just placed over your face or placed over your skin. You can start to feel chakra start to activate, like I already mentioned, my brow chakra or other chakras can start to activate. All kind of energetic sensations can go on when you get into a solid theta state. But just keep in mind, it's nothing to be afraid of. Um, it's just a natural part of entering altered states. My understanding is from entering altered states several times and going out of body several times. I'm certain that this happens all the time. It's just that usually we lose awareness and we're not aware of it. But my understanding is whenever you go to sleep, you start to enter altered states and you start to experience one or more of these altered state phenomena. It's just we lose awareness so quickly that we're not conscious of it. So it actually takes practice to be able to train yourself to be able to be conscious in these altered states, or some kind of natural aptitude for it, um, to be able to remain aware in these altered states. Um, in deep theta, you might also experience vibrations. So if you read non-physical or out-of-body related works, especially the works of Robert Monroe, one of the early pioneers of this era of metaphysical research as we understand it. He talked a lot about the vibration state. So it literally feels like your body is vibrating like you're getting electrocuted. It can be localized, and the deeper state you're in, the more pronounced that can be. So it can feel like you're almost about to shake apart. It can feel like a light tingling in your legs or your face or wherever. Ideally, if your intention is to go to deeper altered states, you want this vibration to be as strong as possible. I haven't really myself heard tingling or crackling sounds. I have, one time heard like a turbine-like sound, like a sound, or a buzzing sound when I was vibrating so fast right before I vibrated out of body one time. So again, some of these experiences may cross certain states. It might not be totally theta. It could go into delta as well. But generally, when you start to get to theta, you'll start to experience some vibrations. Other sounds I might hear, Maxwell, and the theta state is like bangs, clicks, metallic-like clinging sounds. Um, in deep theta, the imagery will start to get full screen. So instead of it being like a little circle in the middle or some scene to the side of your vision, or it'll be like a full screen, like you're looking at a movie. Like everything you see is this image. Maybe you're looking at like that scenery that I saw of the pyramid, or you could even look through your eyelids. So you could literally see through your eyelids into the room. So technically, depending on how you define it, you're not really looking through your eyelids. You're looking with your crown chakra or brow chakra into the room. But the experience is as if you're looking through your eyelids, and you could just see what your room looks like, just as if your eyes were open, but you're looking through your eyelids. And I've taken that and applied it to looking elsewhere, which is one of the things that Robert Bruce talked about. He describes it as like a roaming camera or a remote camera, as if you have a camera that can float around. And the feed is coming straight to your mind's eye, and you could just see what that camera is seeing. Sometimes the quote camera could be roaming around on its own, and you're just seeing where it's going. And sometimes you can take control of it and direct your attention to a certain area or a certain location, and you can see what that is. When you're in this deep theta state, you can actually direct your attention to something and start to be aware of it like a different dimension. Or as I've sometimes used that method to get into the out of body state, or to I guess one thing I used to get to the moon, when I got to the moon, intended to get to the moon at those deep altered states. But generally, when I'm trying to get out of body, I don't try to do too much at the theta state because you can interrupt the experience. But usually I just watch and allow myself to go deeper into altered states. But you could experience a lot of different visual things in a theta state that can seem very, very real and solid, or at the least just as attractive to the attention as when you're looking at things physically. So another interesting thing that you could experience in theta, we talked about the visual, because we're visual beings, as you can see, if you can see. So usually, if you can see physically, then vision is your strongest sense, your most acted upon and paid attention to sense. But in theta, you can have sounds as well. That's when you can have telepathic messages from beings. I received information from beings in theta. I used to experiment with channeling. I reach a theta state when I would channel. Or you could also hear the thoughts of other people. You can hear the thoughts of the earth as a whole. Robert Monroe called this, I believe, the infield, where it's like the frequency of thought of humanity. One thing I didn't experience this too many times, but sometimes I would hear sound as if it was 3 feet off the floor. Like imagine you're in a room like there's a party going on and everybody's talking around you, but you could tell that it's taking place like the floor of this area is 3 feet off our floor level. So I believe it to be listening into a different dimension. But I only heard that like so many times and I haven't really experimented with it too much. But you can hear all kind of things along with seeing faces. So you could imagine that it's not like you experience one phenomena only, and you could only experience one. You could be seeing imagery and hearing things at the same time, and maybe you could smell a certain scent at the same time. It could all overlap, and uh, uh, and make for a quite interesting experience. So sometimes I'd be in the mindset, well, just going to alter states just to experience alter states, and it could be pretty fun. It could be as fun as watching a movie, just watching and hearing all the interesting things that can go on while you're in this theta state. And the theta state is really considered the state of meditation. Like when deep meditators meditate and they're really good at meditation, they'll get into a theta state, the theta brainwave state, and experience a lot of what they're experiencing. I'm gonna take a look at the chats again and see what's going on. Multi-time, do you realize that you have not defined what New Ager means, what you mean by New Ager? So go ahead and define what you mean by New Ager. I see you're using the term several times, but you haven't clarified what you mean by the term New Ager. So if you would do that, then I'll be able to answer your question and let you know if I'm a New Ager or not. Let me adjust the size of my top uh, text up there one moment here. Boom. That feels better. So now we get into the delta state. So the delta state is the state of deep sleep. So basically, your physical body is deeply asleep, but you're still conscious. So of course, it takes a lot of practice and training to remain conscious clearly from the beta state to the alpha state to the theta state to the delta state. But I've succeeded in doing that several times in my over the decades when I've been practicing altered states and out of body states. So once you get into the delta state, that's the state when you're primed to get into the out of body state. So um, so light delta is more pronounced as far as the tactile sensations you can experience. I've been poked by non-physical beings. I've been prodded by non-physical beings, pulled, touched. You know, you could feel someone touch you or brush against your shoulder. At the same time, you can still be having imagery and seeing through your eyelids and things like that. I remember one time I had an experience where it felt like a cat was biting my foot. And the person who I was with at the time, we had cats. So I thought a cat was biting me, and I came out the experience, and there was no cat around, and the door was still closed. The cat was outside the room, but it really felt like a cat was biting my foot. And I actually saw the thing. It could have been a non-physical entity that I saw. It could have been a projection I made in my own mind. But suffice it to say, it felt very physical, like something was biting me very fiercely. So you could experience all kind of tactile sensations. I remember one time I had an experience where I was practicing to get out of body, and suddenly something started poking me. Something was just poking me in the arm. And what I did was I pushed it away. Whatever it was, I literally took my arm and I pushed this thing away because I was thinking, man, I'm trying to get out of body here. Just stop poking me and interrupting me. I'm thinking, right? So then I realized, hold up, I'm laying down trying to get out of body, and I was, you need to make sure if you're doing this stuff that you make sure the door is closed and locked, and if you're not used to it, make sure that, because I've practiced in public places before and stuff like that. So I mean, it's not like that it's danger or anything, but if it might be a concern for you that you might mistakenly think somebody physically broke in and is assaulting you or something, you may want to make sure that the windows are locked and the door is locked, and just make sure you know that. So if something pokes you or pulls you, you feel confident that it's not something physical. But I was in this altered state, and I was seeing whatever I was seeing visually, and I didn't realize how deep an altered state I had reached. So this thing started poking me and poking me, and I pushed it away, thinking, man, I'm trying to get out of body here. Stop messing with me. Then I realized, oh my gosh, I just pushed something away. I must be non-physical. So then I opened up my perceptions, and there was a non-physical being standing next to me. And I have this picture. Let me see if I can find. I drew an image of what this thing looks like. Let me see if I can find it really fast. I tried to find my images earlier, but I must have moved my folders around so much now that I've lost exactly where I put some of these images. But I did do a talk on this um, not too long ago. So push comes to shove, I could just find a talk that I did on it. I did a talk at a public library one time, and so let's see if I can find this image really fast. Aha! So awesome, I did find it. So give me a moment. I'll show these images here. I'll open up these things now so I can show you what this looks like. I think I remember which folder I have these things in, and I actually made a more full color uh, representation of the yellowest light too. So let me take a look and see what we have here. So right now I'm talking about this image that poked me. So this is a non-physical entity. Let me make sure everything is good here. I can scroll through it. So I can just open up this thing here and I can just scroll through the images. So this is basically the slide from when I did that talk at that library. This is one of the slides. So you look at this image here, well to the right, since I'm mostly talking about theta and imagery, uh, you know, the gray just happens to be there, but I've seen grays in my image as well, so it's relevant. But that's a pretty good drawing of what I saw of the gray that I saw, what that looks like. This is a rough drawing, of course, but you want to know what I saw as far as a gray. That's what it looked like. And but this is the entity that was poking me right there. If you see this entity right there, entity 11, I pushed this thing's arm away, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just pushed something away, and I realized I must have pushed it with my non-physical arm. So I opened up my awareness and I'm floating in this non-physical area. Like it's just this forest-like non-physical area where there's trees and grass, and I'm just hovering in the air on my back. Just hovering how I was when I was laying in bed. And I look to the side and I see this thing standing there. There was another entity next to it, but this, of course, caught my attention more as this box-like entity that was standing there just looking at me. And, you know, it seems like I just phased out of body and didn't realize it and phased into this non-physical realm. And this being was there, like, I look at this dude floating there, and he poked me to alert me. So, I was thankful that he alerted me. Um, Let me see here. And if you want to see this talk, I'll put the talk link into the Hangout. Y'all want to see the actual talk? This is a color example of the alpha circles. So usually that's about what the color is like, very yellowish. And just imagine all the circles closing into each other. And this is a portal that I saw. So this is not a theta imagery. This is an actual portal that I saw. This thing on the right here. This is back when I used to walk up and down out of body on my street all the time, just walking around outside, up and down the street. And one time I saw this portal with these non-physical beings standing on either side of it. I was too frightened to go through it at the time, but I just stood and I looked into the portal with my inner vision, and I saw that it went to different realms, like it connected to different areas. But these are some images of the things I saw. This is just a illustration of what it was like in one of my out of body experiences where I was consciousness, and I saw my non-physical body floating over the bed, and my physical body was in the bed. But that's a whole nother story as well. But these are some of the things I saw. Let me go back to the OBE book. So we was talking about delta. When you get into full delta, this is when you can experience some numbness, heaviness, even more strongly pronounced energetic sensations like you're about to shake apart. I remember one time when I was practicing pretty consistently, I had this experience where it seemed like Novocaine was going through my body. So it was like Novocaine started around my neck area, and it just moved down my neck, and everywhere it went, my body was just paralyzed and heavy and frozen. So numbness, heaviness, also roaming balls of energy, just very strong. Everything you experienced previously in the previous states, but very strong, very pronounced. Um, you could also experience paralysis. So another well-known deep altered state phenomena is absolute total paralysis, where you can't move. It feels like you just absolutely cannot move. And one of the ways people describe it is like, like the witches riding you and things like that. There's all kind of wives' tales about it. But my hypothesis about it is simply that you're in a state where you're partially in body, you're partially out of body. You're very deep in an altered state. So from that paralysis state, it's very easy to relax and detach from the physical body and go out of body. Or most people freak out and they try to move and they can't move for a while. If you really want to get out of it, I find you can try to move something small like a pinky finger, and it can help break you out of being in a paralysis state. But it could be very frightening to be in that paralysis state because suddenly you can't move. Sometimes you might see a non-physical being standing by you, by your bed. It could really be a non-physical being, or it could just be something you're projecting. But it becomes easier and easier to tell the difference the more you practice. But imagine being there paralyzed, you can't move. Then somebody is standing by your bed, and then you think it's a burglar. And I've had that before. I'm sitting there paralyzed, and something is in a room. I can feel it or see it in a room. It's like, oh my God, somebody broke into the building, and I'm trying to get out of body. But in all cases, it's been something a non-physical. Suffice it to say, if you're in the paralysis state, in my experience, if something does physically disturb you, you'll come out of it immediately. I remember I had a cat one time, and I was in a deep altered state, and boom, I got just pulled back to my body, like I had floated out or what have you, and I got just jerked back in. And when I opened my eyes and looked, my little pet kitten walked up and put his paw on my cheek, and that was enough to bring me back. So you don't have to worry about being stuck. Let me take a look at the chat and see what's going on. I'm a bit over my intended time, but I'll open up the Hangout momentarily. If you might want to come in and ask some questions about the altered states. Let me see what's going on here. And Maxwell Smart says if New Age is about questioning reality, then I guess I'm New Age. Ha 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 ha. And Logan says, Tom, you're a flat earther. talking trash about New Agers. Yeah, flat earthers. If you are a flat earther, I'm not really familiar with him. But if multi-time was a flat earther, yeah, you don't have anything to say about anybody about what they accept or what they know or what they believe or however you want to term it. Darryl, you are possessed. Okay, what's your evidence for that, multi-time? I hear you're making a lot of claims, but you must be a flat earther because you're making a lot of claims and you're not giving any definitions. You're not giving any evidence or proof so far. So yeah, I bet you are a flat earther. Isn't everyone on Earth in the age of Aquarius? Yeah, that would be correct, Maxwell. If it's an age, then then everybody at this time period would be in that age. So multi-time says demons are real. Yes, I've seen what could be called demonic beings or devils. So whether it matches what religious people call, probably so. They probably saw these beings and just pulled it into their religious belief. But the fact is, there are negative beings or demonic beings. I've seen them and battled with them, and then eventually I got bored of it and just would fly away from them. But yes, they do exist. Which agency do you guys represent? Which agency? Work mostly from home. There you go. Hello, Ken. So yeah, cool for the chats. Now, uh, some other things you could experience in Delta: heaviness. You could feel like you have difficulty breathing, which can be very non-concerning. But my experience is you're starting to transition into the non-physical state. So it just seems like you're not breathing, but your physical body is breathing just fine, but your non-physical self doesn't need to breathe. So the conflict in data could seem very disconcerting. But usually I just take a deep breath and it ends that. I mean, sometimes I guess if your heart is not strong or your lungs are not strong, it could be that you're literally, your pulse and your heartbeat and things are slowed down to the point that you might be having difficulty getting oxygen. But of course, if that's the case, it'll be the case whenever you go to sleep. You're just probably unconscious, so you can't realize it. So I find if you want to go into altered states, it is a good idea to exercise so you don't experience all the discomfort of bad blood flow and things like that. You could also experience various forms of movement when you're in deep delta. You might sink, you might float. Of course, by that point, you're pretty much out of body. You might experience, it could be just a perceived motion, or it can be an actual motion. So one of the imagery that I would experience in delta, if you look at this image here, I'll show it in the hangout. Is this Star Trek type image where suddenly I'll see, like if you think about those blobs of light and pinpoints of light I described in alpha, but think you're thinking maybe physical, like it could be multicolored. Like one time I saw it multicolored. Sometimes it might be like stars. But suddenly you're zooming down this tunnel. I mean, you're just zooming down this tunnel, and the streaks of light are just going past you, and it looks something like this. It might be hard to see in the video, but it's like if you're familiar with Star Trek, and you know when Star Trek when the Enterprise goes into warp in Star Trek The Next Generation, and you see the stars just streaming by, it's like that. So sometimes it could be just an imagery. You could tell you're not really moving, but it looks like streams are going by. And sometimes you're literally just suddenly streaming down this tunnel, and Robert Bruce actually describes it as like a tunnel. And so I haven't only had a few times where I was zooming down a tunnel. I remember one time I had an out of body experience where I started zooming down a tunnel, and I was able to sit up from my physical body and look around the room. But up until that point, it seemed like I was just zooming down this tunnel of light, and it was pretty cool. But when you get into Delta, that's when it gets really interesting as far as the different things you could experience and things you could perceive. Um, you may be aware out of body, like when I talked about when I saw that being. And let me go ahead and find that link for y'all. So I'll post a link to that out of body talk. It's on my channel. All you got to do is go to my channel and look through the videos I've uploaded, and it'll be a talk that I did on the out of body experience. I think I uploaded it like about I don't know, a few months ago. I think it was a talk from like 2016, I believe. Let me take a look. I'll put the link in the chat where I put all of the different images in the context of a greater discussion of the out of body experience. But here, I'm just talking about just the altered states in which you experience along the way to getting out of body. So here's get a shareable link. This the OBE is a talk that's just over an hour long. So I'll go ahead and put this in the chat there if anybody want to see it later. So and again, you might sense or perceive non-physical or trans-dimensional beings, other out-of-body explorers, deceased relatives, extraterrestrials, spirit guides, interdimensionals, non-physical energy. I remember one time I was about out of body. I saw this non-physical object that looked like a geometric, like a Merkaba. It was almost like a Merkaba shape with two tetrahedrons interpenetrating each other in opposite directions, just floating there. So all kind of things. But those are basically the things I experienced. In that, teaching people, you might not experience all of those things in one go, and I'm sure there's a few things here I sort of glanced over or overlooked. So, but you can go to Travel Far yourself. You can read it all in detail, and see more of what it's talking about. Uh, but yeah, but that's generally a good layout of what you might experience on the way from the beta state going through the alter states until right before you're getting into the out of body state. So what I'll do now, let me post the meetup link. It's already in the description anyway, but I'll post it just in case. And if you wanna join, you can go ahead and join. If you have any questions or comments, multi-time, you can come on and give your evidence that I believe you say out of body experience is impossible and things like that. So come on in and give your evidence for that, and I'll be happy to discuss it with you, and we could talk about it. So here's the information on the screen, the meeting details. If somebody wants to type it in, I'll post it into the chat as well. I'll probably spend like another hour on, maybe another hour, maybe hour and a half at the most. So I'll start to not be here for hours and hours and hours anymore doing these things. But usually, of course, it takes only that long with uh, flat earth believers. But and let me check out this link that Logan posted here. Hey, what's going on, Logan? How you doing? That was a link to multi-time there about the Illuminati, huh? Yeah, pretty cool. Seems pretty accurate
I
as
just,
at first glance.
well, I mean, if they exist, but
I'm sure they do, according to my
who
research. Of course,
knows?
I haven't talked to one, but yeah, I'm pretty sure the Illuminati people exist. And
Well,
uh,
I mean, like the like top 13, whatever the Council of 13.
I found some books. I haven't really read them yet, but they're long books. But I haven't taken the time to read them yet. But I plan to. Called like the richest families in America. One of them, and the other one was called like Who Runs the United States or Who Runs the World or something. But yeah, I've heard uh, what is his name? Bill Cooper talk about it a lot, and
Yeah, yeah, I know
yeah.
about
So.
Bill.
Mhm. So yeah, I'm certain they exist, and when you look at just the way the news works, and yeah, but that's for uh, interesting topic. So you're gonna come on and back up your claims. He says I'll do a one versus one. So yeah, so come on, and Logan, you fine with being remaining silent while he give his point?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I'll
So come
just
on,
chill.
and Logan won't say anything, and you can go ahead and make your points. Why does everybody have to make everything a debate? But I guess it's fun. But I don't mind.
It's
So
YouTube, man.
yeah, but come on, multi-time, and Logan's going to say not going to say anything, and just me and you can talk, and you can present your point. So that's a link right there. You can just click it to join until he joins if he wants to join. Do you have any questions or comments on the different you know? Yeah, come on,
Uh,
multi-time. It'll just be me and you.
no, not really, man. I think that's stuff that, like I said, I haven't really experienced. So,
Well, if you're interested,
I,
there's the link to
yeah,
join. Go ahead.
yeah.
If you're interested, there's the link to join the classes. So I plan on starting another class when there's enough people, because I find that, for one thing, a lot of people are not so it takes a lot of effort for most people. So most people are not willing to put forth the effort anyway. So ends up being, I guess I can't say a waste of time because I still learn from that too. But once I get like 20 people signed up, now I start the class. So if you think you'd like to have these experiences yourself, well, of course you can read Travel for yourself. It's not like you have to take the class to learn. All you got to do is go to Travel for, and all the instructions are there.
Hmm.
But if you'd like to learn as well first from a teacher firsthand, you could join the course and I could give you some instruction. And the course book will be Travel for. So yeah, but is there something you think you'll want to try?
Maybe once I start doing meditation, I'll go from there. I guess
Mm,
once I get decent at being able to get into that state of mind.
yeah, meditation is a good avenue. Pretty much any non-physical or metaphysical practice you do, you can, if you do it fully enough, it can get you to the out-of-body state. Like this guy named Jurgen Ziwi. I'm pretty sure I'm butchering his name, but he wrote this book called The Multi-Dimensional Man. I'll present this to you real fast, and his book is awesome. And I read two and a half of his books. He wrote a no, three and a half, two and a half. I read two of his books, and he made another one about meditation. But I really was interested in just one part of that book, so I read just the one part of it. But all he did was meditate and meditate and meditate for years and years. He got like a pro at meditation, and he started to have out of body experiences just from getting so good at meditation. So this is his website right here. So I definitely recommend this book. His first book is called The Multi-Dimensional Man, and then he came with Vistas of Infinity, and his third book is The 10-Minute Moment. But I had my expansive experience where I wasn't even doing meditation. I was it was just a natural result of the forgiveness work that I'm doing. And I just had a moment of very strong forgiveness, and I just reached this expansive state. I wanted to see if he reached something similar. If I remember right, he did. But yeah, he's pretty cool. He meditated for like I don't know, like 40 years or something. Then he started getting out of body. I would just say that in my experience, if you focus on one thing like meditation, it could take longer to reach an out of body state than if you practice in a certain way designed to hit an out of body state. But it's probably a less traumatic way to do it because by the time you get to that point where you start having natural out of body experiences from meditation, usually by that point, you're pretty familiar with non-physical states, and it's not such a big deal anyway. Um, if you look into remote viewing, like the top remote viewers, they will experience out of body experiences as well. Like when you look into like let's say Ingo Swan or um, um, what's that guy's name? He runs the Farsight Institute. Um, he wrote two books where he used clairvoyance or remote viewing to research extraterrestrials. Let me find this guy's name so I can say his name as well. Mm, Courtney Brown. Yeah, Courtney Brown. Um, and this other guy who remote views. He was on Robert. He was on Art Bell's show a whole lot. Ed Dames. Ed Dames. You research their work, you'll find that when they get really good at remote viewing and they stay in that remote viewing state for an extended period of time, they'll start to resolve at the location and be out of body at that location. So pretty much any non-physical thing you do, if you do it enough and enough and enough, you'll start to reach a deep enough level where you can go out of body doing it. So you coming on? Oh, what's going on, Rez? Welcome. Are you coming on multi-time? Are you still there? Awesome. Well, I'll give this guy a moment to see if he wants to come on. If there's no questions or anything, I might go get something to eat.
All right.
I don't know if he's even still here. Let me see if I can see him on the participants list. Well, if he's not, he's definitely a flat earther. I'm gonna make a whole bunch of claims, and then I'm not gonna back it up at all, and then uh,
Yeah.
yeah, then I'm gonna say I'll do a one-on-one, and then when I'm invited to do a one-on-one, I'll leave. That's a flat earther for you. Yeah,
Usually,
yeah,
that's
flat earther.
always.
Most of them. I mean, there's a few of them that come on, and but
Or
Stationary
you
Earth
get somebody like
Montreal came on a lot, huh?
Matt Slick, or you get somebody like Matt Slick who
Uh,
is just silly.
mm. Or Earth is seriously flat. I mean,
Yeah, I
yeah,
don't even know if that guy's like for real or not.
I've heard people say he's not, but I've learned to not underestimate the power of stupidity. So
Yeah, yeah. I
yeah,
mean, yeah,
yeah,
very true. But
hmm
I don't know. I just get a an acting vibe from
yeah,
him, but I could be wrong, of course.
yeah, of course. But it could, like I said, he could just be faking it. I'm falling asleep. Oh my gosh, now he's falling asleep. Um, I tell you what, I don't have anything planned for Wednesday multi-time. Are you free Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Central Time? Wednesday, 8:30 p.m. Central Time. So if you wanna come on Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Central Time, we can talk then if you want. Since I don't have anything planned for that day, and then you can make sure you have enough sleep, and you can have any evidence any resources or references you want to get as well, and we could just talk then. So I'll see what he says about that. Why is this thing smaller than the window? Oh, that's why. Because I'm picking the hangout window, not the overall window, not the main window. There we go. That's better. You'll be working. What time or what time do you want to get together? I can come back later today as well. When will you feel up for it, and we could just schedule it at that time if I'm available. So it doesn't really matter. You want to come back later today after you take a nap or something, or I don't know what time zone you in after you go to sleep and wake back up or something. So just let me know what time, and if I should be able to make it later today. So right now it's 3:04 p.m. Central Time right now. So that's what time it is by me. So just let me know what time is good for you. And hey, what's going on, Sean G? I was breaking down the things you might experience on the way to having an out of body experience from the beta state to the delta state. He was asking me if I'm a new ager, but he didn't want to. At least he hasn't so far defined what new ager is, and he has said I believe that the out of body experience is impossible. So out of body experience is impossible. So I welcome them on or challenge them on, however you want to do it, to to you know prove his point. Yeah, I believe so, but I'll give him his opportunity to crush me, Sean G. But it'd have to be some amazing experience or something. If you can prove that it's impossible, it's like yeah, you had that experience for decades and you've proved it with experiment and so on and so forth. But I'm going to show you it's impossible. I'd love to see it. I'd love to see it. He's a third husband. So why don't you come on and back it up? You say you're falling asleep, but you're waking up to keep making these comments. So why don't you come on and back it up, or just tell me what time, and then we could hash it out. So what time do you want to come back, or what day do you want to come back, and we could just come back at that time and day when you've had enough sleep and experience and sleep and whatever, and we could just do it then. But if not, I'll just start ignoring you because I just find that it's just it's a waste of time to talk to somebody who's going to just be making claims and not want to back them up. So uh, he's a chatter. That's what it is. Sean say he's a chatter. He's not going to show. Uh, well, he's certainly chatting, but he's not even backing up what he's saying in chat. He's just making claims.
Just ironic comments like.
Hmm. Yeah. Maybe he just wants attention. I think some people just want attention or something.
Oh
But
yeah.
this is what I'll do because I've been making my I guess you could all even you can call it my wall of shame. What I'll do before I chat with these people again. So this is what I'll do. Multi-time. Give me a moment here. He's a keyboard warrior, Maxwell says. That's what it seems like. But he says he will debate with me one on one. But so far he hasn't given me a time. But this is what I'll do. Uh, and he has a different name. Let me copy paste the name so I can have it right. I'll call this one multi-time. Boom. So this is the multi-time one. This is what you must do. Uh, let me know a time and date that you will show up to debate, discuss, or what have you about OBE being impossible and your evidence proof. I think that's spelled right. That's what he said. So what you do is let me know the date and time that you'll show up to debate, discuss, or what have you about OBE being impossible and your evidence or proof. Um, as well as you could define what.
Yeah, I don't know if I wonder if he means like you can have that, but it's just fake, you know? Because it's pretty much been demonstrated, like scientifically, that they can even induce OBE and
That's correct. With some kind of electrical
astral
signal.
astral projection. Of course, like almost all scientists, I mean, they're very just fucking materialistic. So they just, when they run certain tests, people that they do it with, I guess apparently aren't able to pass their test, but whatever. I mean,
Yeah, I know. I'm talking about like I have seen studies where they could introduce a certain sort of electrical impulse in the brain to cause the out of body experience, cause an out of
yeah,
body experience.
yeah.
Hey, what's going on,
So I
Jetleys?
mean, they definitely do happen, but
Whether they're real or not might be what he's saying. Well, he's not clear. He's not specifying. He could come on and clarify himself. But this would be your uh, whatever you want to call it, multi-time. Your so until you do this, I'll probably just ignore any more comments you make. This is the way I'm gonna save myself from wasting time with these flat earth believers or experience deniers or however you want to phrase, So until he actually
then
does that, I'll just ignore him going forward. Let me put this in a better position. A moment here. Multi-time. Still getting used to maneuvering this thing. There we go. On the world, what did I just move? I think that's my global thing. So cool. Anybody else want to come on? Anybody else have any questions about ultra states or out of body or anything like that? Or before I hang this thing up? Anybody else want to come on or ask a question in the chat or a um, a criticism, whatever the case is? Why do I keep grabbing the wrong thing? I'm trying to resize this hangout window, but I keep. There we go.
look at this comment.
I'm preparing the way for the alien invasion. Oh my
Yes,
gosh. Yeah, maybe he's just trolling. Maybe he's just trolling.
it's their ambassador.
Yeah. But y'all just ignore his comments from now on. Until you do that, until you back up your claims and prove you're not just trolling or just being silly, you'll have to back all of this stuff up, or I'll just ignore you going forward. Uh, well, I don't even bother putting that one, but which is and the alien invasion prayer and comment. So you can back all that stuff up, or admit that he's just trolling. Oh, no problem, Gentleys. Yeah. So what I'll do, if he ever says that he wants to discuss it, I can make that whatever day or time. And but yeah, I'm sure I'll have this topic again because I'm going to talk about it more since I'm opening it up for the OBE course class thing. So, and how in the world did I turn your? Is your image upside down on its own, or did I turn your image upside down? I think I turned the whole thing upside down. I didn't even know you could do that, but I'll
No,
correct
that's
it
on
another
me.
time. But cool, guys. I'm about to go ahead and head on out and get me something to eat. I'll put up
All
my opener image again. So like, subscribe, comment, and don't be like multi-time and make comments that you're not going to back up like a flat earther. but hopefully he says he's going to come on and gives me a time and date, and we can just come on and chat it out. Next time I'll be on is Wednesday. I don't have a topic yet, but I'll be on Wednesday. Maybe he'll come on, or maybe a flat earther will want to come on, or maybe I'll talk about ETs or astronomy. I haven't really talked directly about astronomy yet, so maybe I'll come on Wednesday and talk about astronomy a bit, if and some of the recent findings or astronomy, or maybe how to properly use a telescope for flat earthers or something like that, or something. But I'll be on Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. I know I put 8 p.m. before and came on late compared to the time, but it's 8:30 Central, so I have enough time after I get off work and everything. And I'll be on and talk then, and maybe I'll have an impromptu one in between now and then. So thank you, Loka, for showing up, and I'll post your link to your channel in the comments at the bottom. So I'll make sure I'll start putting people's links. I still got to go back to the previous ones, but I'll make sure that all the ones I put up that people join, that I put your link in the comments so people could go to your channel as well. And I hope you all have a nice, happy Sunday.
right, man. Peace.
That's all. Y'all be cool.